A decision between the EU and Great Britain on security issues is not in sight. Experts have been warning of consequences since. In just 5 months, the event will occur that the responsible guidelines in the EU and the United Kingdom will hit the No-Deal-Brexit 2.0. In January, when Great Britain was granted EU authorization, both sides had evolved towards an exit agreement that prevented customs controls. But if talks on a trade deal between London and Brussels don't make brisk progress, rights will see new trade barriers from early 2021. In the last one, there's another concern. If there's no cooperation in security and defense policy after December 31st, the cross-border fight against verb criticism and terrorism will be made more difficult. In an interview with the AFP news agency, the German European Minister of State in the Foreign Office, Michael Roth from the Social Democrats, said that he was concerned that the government in London is responsible for speaking to the EU on the subject of foreign and security policy. The next round of negotiations on post-Brexit relations between Brussels and London will take place in the middle of the month. The EU not only wants to reach a comprehensive free trade agreement, but also an agreement on future cooperation in foreign and security policy. For example, in cooperation between the police authorities and the exchange of data between the secret services. According to Roth, good and trustworthy partners are more important than ever in the geopolitically uncomfortable post-corona world, and he was disappointed that London is further and further away from the amicable political declaration between us as a reliable basis for negotiations, said the Minister of State. The political declaration negotiated by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson last year also provides for cooperation between both sides on questions of internal and external security. The value of an agreement between the EU and Great Britain that goes beyond trade issues is illustrated by the huge database in the Schengen Information System, the SIS II. More than 90 million data records are stored there. Whether to search for criminals, missing persons or illegal immigrants, police officers from the Schengen area but also from Great Britain can access the data around the clock. But the UK may have to do without the instrument after Brexit, although it made 572 million queries in SIS II last year. A major turning point for the security authorities on the island. That's just one of the possible consequences of Brexit for security in the EU and in the UK. At the end of July, EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier said that progress was being made in the negotiations on police cooperation. But he also said there were still issues at stake. The transition phase will run until the end of the year, during which EU law will generally continue to apply to Great Britain. Experts have been warning of the impending security risk for some time if there is no agreement in the area of security and defense policy by the end of the year. The Greens fear massive repercussions for security in Europe in the event of a No-Deal-Brexit 2.0. The Greens have made a so-called small request to the federal government. The answer is available either in the German press or at the website of our Bundestag, the federal parliament. After reading this, the Green Party politicians Irene Michalic worries that the federal government either does not take the issue of a Brexit without a further treaty, especially for the security sector, seriously enough, or it downplays it. In its response, the federal government wrote that the end of the transition phase without a treaty is unlikely to have any impact on the long-term European counterterrorism strategy. Michalic can't understand that, because Great Britain could then neither participate in SIS II nor in data exchange via Europol. That's the EU police authority. According to experts, the British are feeding in a particularly large amount of data here, so their lack will make themselves felt. Cooperation with the judicial authority Eurojust is also at stake. The British would no longer be part of Eurodac. That's the fingerprint identification system for asylum seekers. In addition, the European arrest warrant would no longer apply in Great Britain if the transition period ends without an agreement. At the moment, wanted people can be handed over relatively easy for prosecution within the EU. In the event of a no-deal Brexit, the 1957 European Extradition Convention would come into force again. In other areas too, the EU and Great Britain would fall back on agreements that are often decades old. Michalic fears that the joint fight against terrorism will be made much more difficult and that joint action against crime will no longer work as effectively. Crime will not care much about the sheer Brexit and, on the contrary, create new areas of retreat. Michalic speaks of a dangerous vacuum. There's not much time left, and the German Council presidency must do everything in its power to ensure that clear regulations for police cooperation and data exchange between the EU and the United Kingdom are in place. But she doesn't say how that's supposed to look like. The extent to which the United Kingdom will participate in Europol as a third country is the subject of ongoing negotiations, said the federal government's answer. Further participation in SIS II would therefore only be possible for the United Kingdom as a Schengen-associated country. According to the British media, the UK is preparing for the fact that it will lose access to the huge database. Another problem with future cooperation with the British is data protection. The European General Data Protection Regulation will no longer be easily applicable in Great Britain from next year. That is, the United Kingdom would be considered a third country in terms of data protection law. A so-called adequacy decision would have to be drawn up, which would determine that Great Britain offers an adequate level of protection for personal data. The FDP, that's the Liberals in Germany, domestic politician Konstantin Kuhle, however, doubts that this is still possible, because it was not until the end of July that the European Court of Justice declared such an adequacy decision to be ineffective because of the USA's assurances are insufficient, for example, explained Kuhle recently in an interview with the German Handelsblatt. In its answers to the Greens' request, the federal government also addresses data protection issues. The Green Party politician Konstantin von Notz, who put the request together with Michalic, and the Europe expert Franziska Brandner, is too thin. From his point of view, the answers show that the federal government still does not recognize the need for effective data protection in the digital age. A good week before the start of the next round of negotiations, there was currently nothing to suggest that progress could be made quickly. So that was 1 week before negotiations started again this week. In the meantime, EU Chief Negotiator Barnier said last month that it was currently unlikely that both sides could agree on a trade agreement. Two sticking points in particular are currently preventing an agreement in the trade talks: state aid and fisheries. From the beginning of next year, London wants to decide independently from the EU on state subsidies for industry on the island. On the other hand, the United Kingdom would like to keep fishermen from the EU as completely as possible out of British territorial waters in the future. Despite the differences, British negotiator David Frost recently stated that a trade deal in September can still be reached. And if you now want to know more about European politics from a German point of view, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!